The old Victorian house on Maple Street had stood for nearly 100 years, watching over generations of families who called it home. Its current owner, Tom Wilson, had fallen in love with its charm the moment he laid eyes on it, despite the real estate agent's warnings about the extensive renovations it would need. Tom wasn't afraid of a challenge. At 42, he had built a comfortable life as a software engineer, and now he wanted to create the perfect home for his family. Just a little more to the left, Tom called out to his teenage son, Jack, who was helping him move furniture from the living room. They had been renovating room by room for the past 6 months, but today marked the start of their biggest project yet, the main staircase and the cramped space beneath it. "Dad, we've moved this couch like 5 times already," Jack complained, his face flushed with effort. "Lisa said she wanted it by the window, remember?" Tom nodded, looking at the Victorian-era staircase that dominated the center of the house. His wife, Lisa, had gone grocery shopping with their daughter, Amy. Perfect timing to surprise them with progress on the staircase renovation. "You're right, buddy. Let's leave it there and get started on what we came to do." Tom patted his son's shoulder and walked toward the staircase, running his hand along the worn wooden banister. "This old girl has some stories to tell, I bet." The space under the staircase had always bothered Tom. It seemed oddly configured, too small to be useful storage, yet taking up valuable square footage. Unlike modern homes with their efficient use of space, this awkward nook had only a small access door that opened to reveal what previous owners had used as a catch-all for holiday decorations and old coats. "Hand me that pry bar, would you?" Tom gestured to the toolbox as he knelt down by the small door. "I want to see what's behind this paneling." Jack passed the tool and watched as his father carefully worked the edge of the paneling. "You think there's hidden treasure or something?" he joked. Tom laughed. "In this old house? I'd settle for not finding more termite damage." The wood creaked as he applied pressure, decades-old nails loosening their grip. "Help me pull this off." Together, they removed the paneling to reveal the rough interior walls of the staircase enclosure. Tom shined his flashlight inside, expecting to see the usual mess of cobwebs and dust. That's strange," he murmured, leaning closer. "What is it?" Jack asked, trying to peek over his father's shoulder. "See these?" Tom pointed to thick black cables running along the floor joists, disappearing into the wall. "These aren't normal electrical wires. They're too thick and they're not connected to any junction box I can see." The cables were unlike anything Tom had seen in home wiring. Heavy-duty, with a rubber coating that had aged but not cracked, suggesting quality manufacturing. They certainly weren't part of any modern electrical system. "Maybe they're old phone lines," Jack suggested. Tom shook his head. "Too thick for phone lines. And look how they're bundled together. Almost like—" He paused, his engineer's mind working through the possibilities. Almost like data cables, but from before digital was even a thing. He sat back on his heels, dusting off his hands on his jeans. Home renovation projects always uncovered surprises, but this was different. These cables had been deliberately installed and then hidden from view. "Should we call an electrician?" Jack asked. Tom considered it for a moment. "Let's see where they go first. Could be nothing. Maybe the previous owner had some weird hobby set up." He couldn't explain the feeling of curiosity that had taken hold of him. As someone who worked with technology every day, finding these anachronistic cables in his historic home felt like a puzzle he needed to solve. Grabbing his flashlight and a small camera he used to document the renovation progress, Tom began taking pictures of the cable's placement. "Jack, run up to my office and grab my laptop, would you? And that electrical tester in my desk drawer." While his son was gone, Tom continued examining the space. The more he looked, the more questions arose. The cables were secured with metal brackets that had been painted over multiple times, suggesting they'd been there through several homeowners. Yet they weren't on any of the home inspection reports or electrical diagrams he'd received when purchasing the house. Jack returned with the requested items, and Tom connected his camera to upload the photos. "I'm going to see if I can trace where these go," he explained, opening a floor plan of the house he'd created when they first moved in. "Based on the direction, they might run toward the basement." "Cool. Like a treasure hunt," Jack said, his initial boredom with renovation work transforming into genuine interest. Tom smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "Kind of. Let's get some better tools and see what we can find." They spent the next hour carefully removing more paneling, following the path of the mysterious cables. Tom was meticulous, taking care not to damage anything that might need to be restored later. The cables ran behind the wall down toward the basement, but also up, likely into the second floor. "Dad, look at this," Jack called, pointing to a spot where the floorboard seemed different from the others. It was slightly newer, with different grain patterns. Tom examined it closely. "Good eye, Jack. This board's been replaced." Using his pry bar with gentle pressure, he lifted the board to reveal a small gap beneath. The black cables ran through it, but there was something else. A folded piece of yellowed paper. With careful fingers, Tom extracted the paper and unfolded it. It was a diagram of sorts with handwritten notations that had faded with time. Though much of it was difficult to decipher, he could make out what appeared to be a simple circuit drawing. "What is it?" Jack peered over his shoulder. "I'm not entirely sure," Tom admitted, feeling the weight of the paper between his fingers. Tangible history from his own home. "But I think someone used these cables for something important enough to document and hide." The sound of the front door opening announced Lisa and Amy's return. "We're home," Lisa called out. "What are you two up to?" Tom and Jack exchanged glances. The silent communication of co-conspirators. "Should we tell them?" Jack whispered. Tom considered for a moment. His wife had been patient with his endless renovation projects, but he knew her practical nature would suggest calling in professionals to handle unfamiliar wiring. Yet something about this discovery felt personal, like the house was revealing its secrets specifically to them. "Let's wait until we know more," Tom decided. "No sense worrying everyone if it turns out to be nothing." Jack nodded, carefully placing the diagram back where they'd found it and helping his father temporarily replace the floorboard. They had just finished when Lisa appeared in the doorway, grocery bags in hand. "Making progress?" she asked, looking at the partially dismantled stair space. Tom stood up, brushing dust from his knees. "Just getting started," he replied with a casual smile that masked his excitement. "The usual stuff, old wood, outdated wiring. Nothing special." Lisa nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. "Well, don't spend all day on it. We're having dinner with the neighbors tonight, remember? Wouldn't miss it," Tom assured her, sharing another secret glance with Jack as she walked away. Once she was out of earshot, Tom turned to his son. "After dinner, we'll come back to this. I want to see where these cables lead." "What do you think they were used for?" Jack asked, his voice hushed with the thrill of their shared secret. Tom looked at the hidden cables, contemplating the possibilities. "That's what we're going to find out. But whatever it is, it was important enough for someone to go to great lengths to install and then hide." As they packed up their tools for the day, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was just the beginning. The old house had chosen to share its secret with them, and now he felt an almost obligation to uncover the truth. The black cables weren't just an anomaly in the home's construction, they were a thread to the past, waiting to be followed to whatever revelation lay at their end. That night, as the family prepared for their dinner with the neighbors, Tom found himself distracted, his mind continually returning to the hidden cables and the mysterious diagram. What purpose had they served? Who had installed them? And why keep them secret? As he adjusted his collar in the bedroom mirror, he caught Lisa watching him with a knowing smile. "You found something in the house today, didn't you?" she asked, reading his distraction with the ease of someone who had spent 20 years learning his every expression. Tom hesitated, then sighed. "How did you know?" "You have that same look you got when you discovered the original crown molding hidden under the dropped ceiling in the dining room," she said, straightening his tie. "Like a kid who found a map to buried treasure." He laughed, caught in his transparent excitement. "It's probably nothing," he said, though his tone betrayed his belief that it was anything but. "Just some unusual wiring under the stairs. Jack and I are going to trace it tomorrow." Lisa studied his face for a moment, then smiled. "Just promise me 2 things. Don't tear up the whole house, and if you find anything that could be dangerous, call a professional." "Promise," Tom agreed, grateful for her understanding. He didn't mention the diagram or his growing suspicion that whatever they'd found was far more significant than outdated home wiring. Some discoveries needed to be understood before they could be shared. As they headed downstairs to join Jack and Amy for the walk to their neighbor's house, Tom cast one last glance at the partially dismantled staircase. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Whatever secrets the black cables held, he was determined to follow them to their source no matter where in the house. or into what unexpected chapter of history they might lead. Tom barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the thick black cables snaking through the hidden spaces of his house, leading to what exactly? The question kept him tossing and turning until the first gray light of dawn filtered through the bedroom curtains. He slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Lisa, and padded downstairs in his pajamas and slippers. The house creaked softly around him, the familiar sounds of an old building settling. But now those sounds carried new meaning. What other secrets might be hiding within these walls? The partially dismantled staircase waited for him like an unfinished conversation. Tom knelt down and removed the floorboard they'd temporarily replaced yesterday, retrieving the yellow diagram. In the calm quiet of early morning, he spread it out on the living room floor and studied it more carefully. The diagram showed what looked like a network of lines running through a simplified floor plan. Some areas were marked with symbols he didn't recognize, but one thing was clear. Whatever system these cables were part of, it wasn't simple household wiring. It was extensive, deliberate, and professionally installed. "Dad, what are you doing up so early?" Tom looked up to see Jack standing in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep but eyes alert with curiosity. "Couldn't wait to get back to our mystery," Tom admitted with a smile. "Want some breakfast before we dive in?" 20 minutes later, father and son sat at the kitchen table, bowls of cereal half empty as they pored over the diagram together. "See how these lines branch out?" Tom pointed to several pathways marked on the paper. "If I'm reading this correctly, the main cable runs from under the stairs down to the basement. But there are offshoots to at least 3 other locations in the house." "Like a network," Jack suggested, the tech-savvy teenager immediately grasping the concept. Tom nodded. "Exactly. But a network for what? And in a house built long before home networking was a thing?" After finishing breakfast and leaving a note for Lisa explaining they were continuing work on the staircase, Tom and Jack gathered their tools. This time, Tom added a specialized detector he sometimes used in his work, a device that could trace electrical currents through walls. First stop, the basement, Tom decided. They descended the creaky wooden steps to the stone-walled cellar beneath the house. Unlike the rest of the home, which they'd spent months updating, the basement remained largely untouched, a project for another day. Tom switched on the overhead lights, illuminating the maze of old pipes, support beams, and decades of accumulated storage. "According to the diagram, the cables should run along this wall," he said, moving toward the north side of the basement. They began carefully examining the wall, tapping for hollow spots and using Tom's detector to trace the path of wiring within. After nearly an hour of methodical searching, Jack called out from behind a tall metal shelving unit filled with paint cans and gardening supplies. "Dad, I think I found something." Tom hurried over. Jack had moved several boxes to reveal a section of wall that looked slightly different from the surrounding stonework. Instead of the rough-cut stones that formed the foundation of the house, this section appeared to be a carefully crafted facsimile. Stones that, upon closer inspection, were actually a single piece. "It's a false wall," Tom realized, running his fingers along the barely perceptible seam. "And look, the cables go right into it." Using his tools with surgical precision, Tom began probing the edges of the false panel. "There must be a mechanism, some way to open it." Jack watched intently, occasionally offering suggestions or holding the flashlight to better illuminate his father's work. Finally, after applying pressure to different points, they heard a faint click. "The panel shifted slightly. Got it!" Tom exclaimed, his voice echoing in the basement. Together, they carefully pulled the panel forward, revealing a small alcove behind it. The black cables ran into the space, connecting to what appeared to be an old-fashioned junction box. But that wasn't what made them both gasp. Mounted on the wall was equipment they'd never expected to find. A vintage radio set complete with dials, switches, and what looked like early microphone equipment. "What is all this?" Jack whispered, his voice hushed with awe. Tom shook his head, equally amazed. "It looks like some kind of radio setup, but not your everyday radio." He examined the equipment carefully, noting how the components were arranged. "This is sophisticated stuff, especially for its time." The equipment appeared to be decades old, covered in a thick layer of dust but otherwise remarkably preserved in the dry basement air. Tom noticed something else, a small drawer built into the wall beneath the radio equipment. He pulled it open gently to reveal a leather-bound notebook. "Jack, look at this," he said, carefully lifting the book from its resting place. The leather was cracked with age, but the book remained intact. Opening it revealed pages of handwritten notes, diagrams, and what appeared to be strings of numbers and letters. "Are those codes?" Jack asked, peering over his father's shoulder. "I think they might be," Tom replied, turning the pages slowly. Whatever this setup was used for, someone was sending or receiving coded messages. Their discovery was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the basement stairs. "Tom? Jack, are you down here?" Lisa called out. They exchanged guilty glances, caught in their secret exploration. "Over here, honey," Tom called back, deciding that their find was too significant to keep hidden any longer. Lisa appeared around the corner with Amy trailing behind her. "You two disappeared so early, She stopped short, taking in the open panel and the equipment revealed behind it. "What in the world is all that?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Tom explained, showing her the notebook and describing how they'd followed the cables from under the stairs. "I think our house might have been used for something important, maybe during a war or something similar." Lisa examined the equipment with growing interest. Unlike Tom's excitement about the technology, her eyes were drawn to a small metal plate affixed to one of the devices. "Look at this," she said, wiping away decades of dust to reveal engraved lettering. "Property of U.S. Signal Corps, 1943. World War II," Amy breathed, the 15-year-old's eyes widening. History had always been her favorite subject in school. "Our house was part of World War II?" The family stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the significance of their discovery. The old Victorian wasn't just a home, it had played a role in history. "We need to learn more about who lived here back then," Lisa suggested, her initial skepticism transforming into genuine curiosity. "The Historical Society might have records. And I want to understand what kind of communications they were handling," Tom added, his fingers gently tracing the dials of the radio equipment. "This setup is too elaborate for casual use." Jack, meanwhile, had continued exploring the alcove and suddenly called out, "Hey, there's another cable running from here. A different one. It goes into the ceiling." Tom looked up, noticing the thinner wire that disappeared into a small hole drilled through the basement ceiling joists. "That would lead to the first floor, probably near the dining room. More hidden equipment?" Amy suggested, now fully invested in the mystery. "Only one way to find out," Tom replied, his renovation project completely forgotten in the thrill of discovery. "Let's follow it and see." Back upstairs, they gathered in the dining room, examining the floors and walls for any sign of where the wire might emerge. It was Amy who spotted the unusual feature, a decorative wooden medallion in the crown molding that didn't quite match the others. "That one looks different," she pointed. "The pattern isn't exactly the same." Tom brought over a stepladder and carefully examined the medallion. Sure enough, it was a clever disguise for what appeared to be a small listening device. The wire from the basement connected to it, creating what Tom realized must have been a way to monitor conversations in the dining room. "This house wasn't just used for sending messages," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It was some kind of intelligence operation." As the family continued their exploration, they discovered more modified areas throughout the house, subtle alterations that had gone unnoticed for decades, but now revealed their purpose as part of a sophisticated surveillance system. By late afternoon, they had mapped most of the network, but the biggest question remained unanswered. Who had installed it, and what exactly had they been listening for? Tom carefully replaced the journal in its hiding spot, not wanting to disturb any potential historical evidence until they knew more. "Tomorrow we visit the Historical Society," he announced. "We need to find out who lived here during the war." That night, the Wilson family sat around their dining room table, now acutely aware of the hidden microphone above their heads, discussing theories about their home's secret past. The ordinary suburban life they'd known had been transformed by the discovery of those black cables under the stairs. Their house had witnessed history, perhaps even helped shape it. As they talked, Tom noticed Lisa gazing thoughtfully at the walls around them. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about the people who lived here before," she replied. "How they carried this secret while going about their daily lives, maybe sitting at this very table, in this very room. Do you think they were spies?" Amy asked, her imagination clearly captured by the possibility. Tom smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. I don't know if spies is the right word, but they were definitely involved in something sensitive and important. As they prepared for bed that night, the house seemed different to all of them. Not just an old building in need of renovation, but a place with purpose, with stories embedded in its very walls. The black cables had led them into the past, connecting them to previous owners in an unexpected way. Tom stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the quiet street. How many neighbors, how many passers-by had never suspected what was happening inside these walls during those tense war years? And what would tomorrow's visit to the Historical Society reveal about the house's role in history? He couldn't wait to find out. The Westfield Historical Society was housed in a stately brick building that had once served as the town's library. Tom had driven past it countless times but had never had a reason to stop in until now. The entire Wilson family piled out of their car on Saturday morning, eager to uncover more about their home's mysterious past. Remember, Tom said as they approached the entrance, we don't know exactly what we're dealing with yet. Let's just say we're researching the history of our house for the renovation. Lisa nodded in agreement. No need to mention hidden radio equipment and secret passages until we know more. The inside of the Historical Society was quiet and smelled faintly of old books and furniture polish. A gray-haired woman looked up from a desk covered with photographs and smiled as they entered. Good morning. I'm Helen Parker, the Society's archivist. How can I help you folks today? Tom stepped forward. Good morning. We recently bought the old Victorian at 1482 Maple Street and are doing some renovations. We're interested in learning more about the history of the house, especially during the 1940s. Helen's eyes lit up. The Blackwood House. Oh, what a wonderful old place. You know, not many people come in asking about specific houses unless they've found something interesting. Her knowing look made Tom wonder if theirs wasn't the first historic home in Westfield to reveal unexpected secrets. We're just curious about who might have lived there during the war, Lisa added smoothly, for context while we're restoring it. Of course, Helen said, rising from her chair. Let me pull the records we have. The Blackwood House has quite an interesting history. As Helen disappeared into a back room, Amy whispered, Blackwood House? Our house has a name? Apparently so, Tom replied, looking around at the photographs lining the walls, snapshots of their town through the decades. Helen returned carrying several folders and a large leather-bound book. Here we are. During the period you're interested in, the 1940s, the house was owned by Dr. Robert Blackwood and his wife, Catherine. Dr. Blackwood was a professor of linguistics at the university. She opened one folder to reveal a black and white photograph of a distinguished-looking man with round glasses standing beside a woman in a tailored suit on the very porch of their house. This was taken around 1942, shortly before Dr. Blackwood took a leave of absence from teaching. A leave of absence? Tom prompted, trying not to sound too eager. What for? Helen adjusted her reading glasses. The records say he was recruited for a government position related to the war effort, though it doesn't specify exactly what. Many academics were pulled into various roles during that time. Research, intelligence work, all sorts of things. Jack and Amy exchanged excited glances at the mention of intelligence work. Tom maintained his casual demeanor, though his heart had begun beating faster. Did they have any children? Lisa asked, studying the photograph. No children, Helen replied. But they frequently hosted guests, visiting professors, government officials. The Blackwoods were quite social, from what our records indicate. Tom thought about the listening devices they'd found in the dining room. These social gatherings, would they have included foreign visitors? Helen looked up with newfound interest. As a matter of fact, yes, Dr. Blackwood specialized in Germanic and Slavic languages. During the years before America entered the war, he hosted several European academics who had fled their countries. She leaned forward slightly. May I ask why you're so interested in these specific details? Lisa intervened smoothly. We found some old correspondence tucked behind a baseboard during renovations. Nothing important, just curious about the people who wrote them. This wasn't entirely untrue, though it sidestepped their actual discovery. Helen seemed satisfied with the explanation. Well, you're in luck. Dr. Blackwood's niece donated a collection of his papers to us about 15 years ago. They're not fully cataloged yet, but you're welcome to look through them if you'd like. 20 minutes later, The Wilson family sat at a large table in the society's reading room, carefully examining the contents of several archival boxes. They found university documents, personal correspondence, and photographs of Dr. Blackwood with various academic colleagues. "Look at this," Amy whispered, sliding a document toward her parents. It was an official letter on government stationery dated June 1942. Though heavily redacted even after all these years, the visible text mentioned services to the Office of Strategic Services and vital contribution to signal intelligence operations. The OSS, Tom breathed. That was the predecessor to the CIA during World War II. So he was a spy? Jack asked, perhaps a bit too loudly, earning a sharp look from his mother. More like an intelligence analyst, Tom corrected, keeping his voice low. His background in German languages would have been invaluable for translation and code work. They continued sifting through papers, finding more breadcrumbs but no smoking gun that explicitly confirmed what their house had been used for. Then Lisa made the most significant discovery yet. A small notebook tucked inside a larger volume of Germanic poetry. Unlike the official documents, this notebook contained personal entries written in Dr. Blackwood's neat handwriting. Most entries were mundane, notes on garden planning, household expenses, books to order, but scattered throughout were cryptic references that took on new meaning given what they now knew. April 18, 1943, Lisa read quietly. Modified equipment installed in basement location. Kay, concerned about noise from dining room pickup, assured her technicians will address this next week. Tom felt a chill run up his spine. This directly confirmed what they'd found hidden in their house. May 2, 1943, Lisa continued. Dinner party successful. B&M unaware of monitoring. Transcript sent through usual channels. Expecting feedback by Thursday. The family exchanged meaningful looks. Their dining room had indeed been used to gather intelligence from unsuspecting guests. Helen approached their table with a kind smile. Finding anything interesting? Tom quickly closed the notebook and slid it beneath other papers. Lots of fascinating day-to-day details. It really helps us connect with the history of the house. I'm glad, Helen replied. Oh, I nearly forgot. We have some photographs of the interior from that period. They were part of an architectural survey done in 1946 after the war. Would you like to see those as well? Absolutely. Tom nodded enthusiastically. The photographs were revelatory, showing their home as it had looked during the Blackwoods' residence. While most rooms appeared normal, Tom noticed subtle differences in the basement layout compared to what existed now, and the area under the stairs appeared to have a different configuration entirely. Look, he whispered to Lisa, pointing to one photo showing the main hallway. See that junction box? That's where we found the first cables. But in this picture, it's clearly visible, not hidden. They must have concealed everything after the war ended, Lisa reasoned. As closing time approached, Helen allowed them to make copies of several documents and photographs. Your interest in the Blackwood house is wonderful to see, she said as they gathered their things. Too few people appreciate the history right under their noses. If she only knew how literally true that was in their case. On the drive home, the family could barely contain their excitement, talking over one another as they pieced together what they'd learned. So our house was basically a listening post, Jack summarized. Dr. Blackwood used his academic connections to invite people over, and then they'd spy on the conversations. People who might have had connections to Axis powers, Tom added, or who had recently escaped from occupied territories and might have valuable information. Amy had been unusually quiet, studying the copied photographs. Dad, she said suddenly, look at this picture of the backyard. See that structure behind the garden shed? That's not there anymore. Tom glanced at the photo. She was right. There appeared to be a small outbuilding partially visible behind what was now just an open lawn. Another place to check, he said, the thrill of discovery reigniting. The mystery keeps growing. When they arrived home, their house felt different. No longer just the place they lived, but a piece of living history. They walked through the rooms with new awareness, imagining Dr. Blackwood and his wife hosting dinner parties while secretly recording their guests, or receiving coded transmissions in the basement radio room. What do we do with all this information? Lisa asked as they gathered in the kitchen. Should we contact someone? A museum or historical preservation society? Tom considered this. Let's see what else we can find first. There might be more hidden areas we haven't discovered yet. Like whatever used to be in the backyard, Amy reminded them, showing the photograph again. Jack had already grabbed a shovel from the garage. Let's start digging. Whoa, hold on, Tom laughed, taking the shovel from his eager son. We need to be systematic about this. That structure was removed for a reason, and we don't want to damage anything that might still be there. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, the family moved to the backyard. Tom used the photograph to triangulate the approximate location of the mysterious outbuilding, marking the corners with small flags. Tomorrow, he decided, we'll start a careful excavation and maybe see if we can find any city records about what this structure was. Building permits, utility connections, anything that might tell us its purpose. That evening, as the Wilsons ate dinner, they couldn't help but glance occasionally at the crown molding where they now knew a microphone had once been hidden. Their comfortable suburban home had been transformed by knowledge. The walls that had once merely sheltered them now told a story of secrecy, danger, and the quiet heroism of ordinary people doing extraordinary work. I wonder if Dr. Blackwood ever imagined that someday a family would discover what he had done. Lisa mused as they cleared the dinner dishes. I wonder if there are other houses like ours, Amy added, with secrets still waiting to be found. Tom nodded, looking around at the home they were slowly making their own. Every old house has stories, he said. We're just lucky that ours turned out to be so remarkable. But as they would soon discover, they had only scratched the surface of the Blackwood house's secrets. The structure in the backyard held answers that would connect their home not just to America's past, but to world history. Sunday morning arrived with perfect weather for their backyard excavation. Tom had spent half the night researching proper archaeological techniques on his laptop, determined to approach this with the respect it deserved. This wasn't just digging up dirt, it was potentially uncovering history. Okay, team, Tom said as the family gathered in the backyard after breakfast. He'd laid out an assortment of tools: trowels, brushes, gloves, buckets, and a sifting screen he'd hastily constructed from an old window screen and some lumber. We're going to work in a grid pattern, removing soil carefully and documenting anything we find. Jack rolled his eyes. Dad, we're looking for a building foundation, not dinosaur bones. Your father's right about being careful, Lisa said, putting on gardening gloves. If there's anything fragile down there, we don't want to destroy it. Amy had brought her digital camera and a notebook. I'll document everything, she volunteered, already taking before pictures of their marked-out excavation area. They began working, removing the top layer of grass and soil in careful squares. The morning sun grew warmer as they worked, and the pile of excavated earth grew steadily larger. I'm hitting something, Tom called after about an hour of digging. His trowel had struck a hard surface about 18 inches below ground level. Feels like concrete. The family gathered around as Tom carefully cleared away more soil, revealing a flat concrete surface. As they expanded the cleared area, they found what appeared to be the top of a small foundation. This matches the location in the photograph, Lisa confirmed, comparing their find to the Historical Society's image. But it's smaller than I expected. Maybe most of it was above ground, Jack suggested, wiping sweat from his forehead. Like a shed with a small foundation. They continued excavating around the perimeter, eventually revealing a concrete rectangle about 6 feet by 8 feet. Near what would have been the front edge, Tom uncovered something unexpected, a heavy metal ring embedded in the concrete. This looks like a trapdoor handle, he said, brushing away more dirt. Sure enough, the ring was attached to what appeared to be a metal plate or door set into the concrete foundation. A basement? Amy wondered, her voice tinged with excitement. For a building this small? Tom and Jack worked together to clear the remaining soil from the metal plate. It was heavily rusted but intact, a square hatch about 3 feet across. Tom gripped the ring with both hands and pulled, but years of corrosion had sealed it shut. Let me get some WD-40 from the garage, he said, standing up. This thing hasn't been opened in decades. When he returned, they applied the lubricant generously around the edges of the hatch and waited for it to penetrate the rust. After several minutes, Tom tried again and this time felt a slight give in the metal. I think it's working, he grunted, pulling harder. Jack joined him, and together they strained against decades of resistance. With a loud, protesting screech, the hatch finally broke free and swung upward. The family peered into the opening. A set of metal rungs led down into darkness. It's some kind of underground room, Lisa said, shining a flashlight into the hole. The beam illuminated a small concrete chamber about 10 feet deep. Tom looked at his family. I'll go first to make sure it's safe. Be careful, Lisa warned. That ladder could be rusted through. Testing each rung carefully before putting his full weight on it, Tom descended into the chamber. The air was stale but breathable, and cooler than the summer air above. As his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he called up, "It's okay. Hand me the bigger flashlight." Jack passed down their heavy-duty flashlight, and Tom swept its powerful beam around the underground space. What he saw made his breath catch. "You all need to see this," he called up. "It's incredible." One by one, the family climbed down the ladder to join Tom in the underground chamber. It was small but packed with significance. Against one wall stood a rust-spotted metal cabinet. Another wall held what appeared to be a large radio setup, similar to the one in their basement but more extensive. And on a central table lay what looked like maps and documents, preserved in the dry, sealed environment. "This is amazing," Lisa whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the concrete room. "It's like a time capsule." Tom approached the table carefully. The papers were brittle with age but still legible. Topographical maps of European regions with handwritten notations, technical diagrams, and what appeared to be code books. This must have been some kind of backup facility, he theorized, examining the equipment, or maybe even the primary facility that was later moved into the house for security. Amy had discovered something else, a wooden crate in the corner with official-looking stenciling. "United States Army Signal Corps," she read aloud, brushing dust from the faded lettering. They spent the next hour carefully examining the underground room's contents. The radio equipment was similar to what they'd found in their basement, but more extensive. The cabinet contained spare parts, tools, and several notebooks filled with what appeared to be technical notes and transmission logs. "Look at these dates," Jack said, pointing to one logbook. "They go from 1943 to early 1945. The last entry is from April, just before the war in Europe ended." "And look at this," Lisa added, carefully turning pages in another book. "These appear to be transcripts of intercepted messages. Most are in code, but some have translations." Tom was examining the maps. "These show military installations in Germany," he said, pointing to markings that couldn't be random. "I think Dr. Blackwood wasn't just listening to dinner conversations. He was intercepting actual German military communications." The magnitude of what they'd discovered was sinking in. Their ordinary suburban home had been the site of genuine wartime intelligence operations, work that may have helped the Allied forces and saved countless lives. "We need to document all of this properly," Tom said, looking around at the time capsule they'd uncovered. "And then contact someone who can help preserve it. This is too important to keep to ourselves." They spent the rest of the afternoon photographing and cataloging everything in the underground room, careful not to disturb the arrangement of the historical materials. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly climbed back up the ladder, securing the hatch to protect the contents until they could notify proper authorities. Back in their kitchen, the family sat around the table with cups of hot chocolate. Despite the summer weather, something about their discovery had left them all feeling the need for comfort. "I've been thinking," Tom said, warming his hands around his mug. "Remember the notebook we found at the Historical Society? It mentioned usual channels for sending information." Lisa nodded. "You think there might be more to find? A way they transmitted all this intelligence?" "Maybe," Tom replied. "The radio equipment we found could receive messages, but sending would require an antenna. A big one, probably. And we haven't found anything like that yet. Unless—" Amy's eyes widened with sudden realization. "Dad, the weather vane on the roof. Remember how you said it was unusually large for the house? And it has those weird metal strips around it?" Tom's jaw dropped slightly. "You might be right. That could absolutely be disguised as a weather vane. And those black cables would need to connect to it somehow," Jack added excitedly. "Maybe through the attic?" They all looked up toward the ceiling, imagining the complex network that might run through their home, all the way from the basement to the roof. "First thing tomorrow. I'm checking the attic," Tom decided. "But tonight I'm going to make some calls. This isn't just about our house anymore. This is genuine historical significance." Later that evening, after Jack and Amy had gone to bed, Tom and Lisa sat in the living room, still processing the day's discoveries. When we bought this house, all I wanted was a fixer-upper with good bones and some character, Lisa said with a gentle laugh. I never imagined we'd find something like this. Tom nodded, looking around at the walls that had kept secrets for so many decades. It makes you wonder how many other ordinary-looking houses have extraordinary histories hiding inside them. What do you think will happen now? Lisa asked. Once we report what we've found? Tom considered this. Best case scenario? The Historical Society or maybe even a museum helps us preserve everything properly. The house might even get designated as a historical landmark. Our renovation plans might need some adjusting, Lisa noted with a smile. Worth it, though, Tom replied. We're not just homeowners anymore. We're caretakers of a piece of history. As they headed upstairs to bed, Tom paused at the staircase where their adventure had begun just days ago, with the discovery of those mysterious black cables. What had started as a simple renovation project had turned into something none of them could have imagined. And he couldn't shake the feeling that they still hadn't uncovered all the secrets the old Blackwood house had to share. Tomorrow, the attic awaited, and with it, perhaps, the final pieces of the puzzle. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of excitement and anticipation. Tom had called in to work, using a personal day to continue their exploration. Some things were simply more important than software engineering, and uncovering a piece of forgotten history definitely qualified. The attic access is in the upstairs hallway, Tom explained as the family gathered beneath the small ceiling hatch. I've been up there before to check the insulation, but I wasn't looking for anything unusual at the time. He positioned the ladder and climbed up, pushing open the hatch. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight as he hoisted himself into the cramped space. The rest of the family waited below, eager for updates. Anything? Jack called up after a minute of silence. Just getting oriented, Tom replied, his voice muffled. There's a lot of old insulation and… Wait a minute. The flashlight beam had caught something reflecting back. A metal track running along one of the roof beams, barely visible beneath decades of dust. Tom brushed it clean with his gloved hand, revealing a copper cable channel that had been carefully installed along the structural supports of the roof. I found something, he called down. There's a wiring track up here heading toward the center of the house. Following the metal track, Tom crawled awkwardly through the attic space, pushing aside old holiday decorations and boxes of forgotten belongings from previous owners. The track led to what appeared to be a junction box mounted directly beneath the highest point of the roof. Jack, hand me the electrical tester, he called down. His son quickly passed up the device Tom used in his renovation work to detect active wiring. The junction box wasn't just old, it was custom built, unlike anything in modern construction. When Tom carefully opened it, he found exactly what they had suspected. The same type of thick black cables they discovered under the stairs, converging at this point and then running upward through a small hole in the roof itself. Amy was right, he announced, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. The weather vane is definitely connected to these cables. It must be an antenna disguised as a decorative element. Tom took several photos with his phone before backing carefully toward the attic hatch. Once downstairs, he shared his findings with the family, showing them the images of the sophisticated wiring network hidden in their attic for decades. So the underground room was for receiving and decoding messages, Lisa reasoned, and the weather vane antenna was for sending information back to military intelligence. Exactly, Tom agreed. Dr. Blackwood's house was a fully operational intelligence outpost, hidden in plain sight in suburban America. What do we do now? Amy asked, clearly hoping the answer wouldn't be to simply cover everything up and continue with normal life. I already called Professor Taylor at the University History Department, Tom said. He's bringing someone from the State Historical Preservation Office this afternoon. They were extremely interested when I described what we found. The doorbell rang shortly after lunch. Professor Taylor was a bearded man in his 50s with an infectious enthusiasm that became apparent the moment Tom began showing him their discoveries. With him was Dr. Eleanor Chen from the State Historical Preservation Office and, most surprisingly, a man who introduced himself only as Mr. Phillips from Washington. From Washington? Lisa asked, raising an eyebrow. Department of Defense, he clarified with a thin smile. Historical Records Division. The visitors were speechless when Tom showed them the basement radio room, carefully removing the false panel to reveal the vintage equipment. Professor Taylor kept muttering extraordinary and unbelievable as he gently examined the radio set, while Dr. Chen took photographs and detailed notes. Mr. Phillips said little but studied everything intensely, occasionally asking surprisingly specific technical questions about the equipment that suggested he knew far more about such systems than a typical records keeper would. The underground bunker in the backyard elicited even stronger reactions. Professor Taylor nearly wept with joy at the perfectly preserved maps and code books. Dr. Chen immediately began discussing preservation methods for the documents, and Mr. Phillips spent a long time examining the transmission logs, his expression unreadable. This is one of the most significant home-based intelligence outposts we've ever documented from the period, Dr. Chen explained as they returned to the house. Most were dismantled after the war, with the equipment reclaimed by the military. Finding one so intact is, well, it's practically unheard of. Professor Taylor nodded eagerly. The Blackwood house wasn't just any listening post. Based on these transmission logs and the geographic focus of the intelligence, I believe Dr. Blackwood was part of a network tracking German rocket development, possibly even the V-2 program. The V-2 rockets were the first long-range ballistic missiles, Mr. Phillips explained, seeing the family's questioning looks. They were devastating weapons, and understanding their development was crucial to the Allied war effort. The family listened in growing amazement as the experts continued to assess the historical significance of their discoveries. What had begun with black cables under the stairs had led to something far more important than they could have imagined. "We'd like to propose something," Dr. Chen said finally, looking at Tom and Lisa. "Given the historical significance of your home, we'd like to formally document everything and potentially register the house as a historical landmark. This would include preservation grants to help maintain the historical elements while still allowing you to live normally in the home." Tom and Lisa exchanged glances, silently communicating in the way long-married couples do. "We'd be honored," Tom replied. "This history deserves to be preserved." "There's something else," Mr. Phillips added, speaking directly to Amy, who had been showing particular interest in the code books. "The cryptographic work Dr. Blackwood was involved with laid the groundwork for modern computer science. Your school might be interested in developing a special project around this local connection to computing history." Amy's eyes widened. "That would be amazing. I've been thinking about studying computer science in college." Over the next few weeks, their home became a hub of careful historical documentation. Experts in military history, cryptography, and wartime communications visited to examine the equipment. University students helped catalog every document from the underground bunker. Each discovery filled in more details about the critical work Dr. Blackwood had performed. The most touching moment came when they were contacted by an elderly woman named Dorothy Blackwood Martin, Dr. Blackwood's niece, the same one who had donated his papers to the Historical Society years earlier. When she visited their home, her eyes filled with tears as she saw the preserved radio room. "Uncle Robert never talked about his war work," she explained, her voice quavering slightly. "We knew he did something important, but he was bound by secrecy oaths. He took those secrets to his grave. To see it now, to finally understand, it means more than I can say." She brought with her previously unseen photographs of Dr. Blackwood and his wife in the very rooms of the house where the Wilsons now lived. In one remarkable image, Dr. Blackwood stood proudly beside the weather vane before it was installed, the secret antenna that had helped win a war. "He would be so pleased to know a family like yours is living here now," Dorothy told them, "and that you cared enough to uncover the truth." By the end of summer, the renovation project had transformed into something far different than they had originally planned. The staircase was still refinished, but the area beneath it now featured a glass panel that allowed visitors to see the original cables that had started their journey of discovery. The basement radio room was carefully preserved, with newly installed museum-quality lighting to showcase the historical equipment. A small plaque was placed beside their front door, officially recognizing the Blackwood house as a site of historical significance. School groups occasionally visited for educational tours, with Amy proudly serving as a guide, explaining how the secret communication systems had worked. One evening in early fall, the Wilson family sat on their back porch watching the sunset. The weather vane, now known to be a sophisticated antenna, turned gently in the breeze above them. "You know," Tom said thoughtfully, When we bought this house, I was just thinking about the physical structure. Good bones, solid foundation, fixable problems. Lisa nodded. And instead, we found its soul. Do you think we'll ever know everything about what happened here? Jack asked, looking up at the weather vane silhouetted against the darkening sky. Probably not, Tom admitted. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, I suppose. But we uncovered the most important one, Amy said. That ordinary people in an ordinary house can do extraordinary things when it really matters. The family fell silent, contemplating this truth. Their home wasn't just a structure of wood and stone and hidden cables. It was a testament to courage and ingenuity, to quiet heroes who had served their country from behind lace curtains on a peaceful suburban street. Black cables under the stairs had led them not just to forgotten equipment but to a deeper connection, to history, to their community and to each other. The house that had once kept secrets had brought the Wilson family closer together in the sharing of them. As darkness fell, lights came on in the windows of the old Victorian, shining out into the night just as they had during those tense war years. But now they illuminated not secrets but a family proud to be the caretakers of a legacy larger than themselves. All because Tom Wilson had wondered about some strange black cables hidden under his stairs.